Sometimes, life throws punches you do not expect, but what really destroys you are the ones that come from where you least imagine it. That is how my story began. The day my brother, my own brother, decided to destroy everything I had built with a single selfish decision. And no, this is not one of those stories of petty family squabbles. This is betrayal at its finest. It all started with a phone call. I remember I was finishing up some important projects at work when the phone rang. It was a close friend, one of those who always has information you would rather not know. With a tense voice, he dropped the bomb. Did you know that Laura and your brother have been seeing each other behind your back? I felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. First, I laughed, incredulous. That cannot be true, I thought. But when the details began to emerge, I knew it was not a joke. It was real. The man I considered my closest ally had become the thief of my happiness. My brother, who had always been the life of the party, the golden boy of the family, had decided that what I had with Laura was something he wanted for himself too. And Laura, with whom I had built dreams, had chosen to betray my trust. The worst part was that they did not even try to hide it well. Photos on social media, blatant comments, even some mutual friends knew and said nothing. It was as if they were waiting for me to find out in the most humiliating way possible. When I confronted Laura, her response was a bucket of cold water. It was not planned, she said with a face that mixed regret and justification. How could it not be planned? It takes many conscious decisions to betray someone like that. The most painful thing was that she did not even try to fight for our relationship. She simply left me with the worst combination of emotions: rage, sadness, and a humiliation so deep that it kept me awake at night. But the real blow came when I found out she was pregnant. And no, it was not mine. It was his. My brother had not only stolen my girlfriend, but he was also about to start a family with her. The irony of it all was suffocating. I had planned a future with Laura, and now that future was going to be built, but not with me. I could not stand it. I decided to cut off all contact with both of them. I blocked their numbers, deleted them from social media, and tried to focus on my work. However, something inside me knew that this would not be the last time our paths would cross. My brother and Laura had broken something inside me, but they had also ignited a spark. A spark that, although small, was beginning to burn with a fire I had never felt before: the desire to overcome this situation and show them that no matter how hard they tried to bring me down, I was not going to stay down. After cutting off all contact with them, I found myself in a kind of emotional limbo. On the one hand, I was devastated. On the other, there was a tense rage that kept me from completely falling apart. But I was not going to wallow. If I wanted to move on, I would have to do it alone. Work became my refuge. I spent hours at the office, much more than necessary, trying to fill the void left by the betrayal. My colleagues noticed my change, but no one dared to ask. Perhaps because they saw in my eyes that I was in no mood for explanations. And so, day after day, I built a routine that revolved around a single purpose: to overcome this and come out stronger. The funny thing about crises is that, although at first they seem like a tragedy, they can also be the push you need to transform yourself. I began to see opportunities where before I only saw problems. My boss, impressed with my dedication, assigned me an important project, one that could define my career, and I gave it my all. Not only because I wanted to prove my worth, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I was still capable of achieving great things. If Laura and my brother thought they had destroyed me, they were wrong. Outside of work, I also made important changes. I joined a gym, something I had been putting off for years. At first, it was more to release all that pent-up energy, but it soon became something more. I felt that with each weight I lifted, I also lifted a little of the emotional weight I was carrying. I looked in the mirror and began to recognize someone different. Someone stronger, both physically and mentally. As the months went by, I began to feel like I was regaining control of my life. I did not want Laura or my brother to continue being the protagonists of my story. So, I also looked for ways to surround myself with new people. I joined a group of entrepreneurs who met on weekends to share ideas. It was there that something was born that would change my life: the idea of starting my own company. I had always had that dream, but I had never taken it seriously. However, this time was different. I had a clear goal to build something of my own, something that no one could take away from me. And with that idea in mind, I began to plan. At first, it seemed impossible. I did not have enough money saved, and the nights felt endless as I tried to balance the books, do research, and find investors. But, for the first time in months, I felt like I had something that gave me hope again. Of course, not everything was easy. There were times when frustration overwhelmed me, days when doubts returned with a vengeance, whispering in my ear that maybe Laura was right to leave me, that maybe I was not good enough. But in those moments, I remembered the pain they had caused me, and that drove me to keep going. I was not going to let the memory of their betrayal dictate my future. And so, little by little, my vision began to take shape. I recruited a small team of people who believed in my project as much as I did, and together we started building from scratch. Every little achievement felt like a personal victory, but best of all was the certainty that, for the first time in a long time, I was not fighting to prove anything to anyone but myself. Meanwhile, Laura and my brother remained off my radar. Occasionally, someone would casually mention that things were not going as well for them as it seemed at first, but I did not want to know more. I had too many important things going on to worry about them. However, deep down, I knew that our stories were not over yet. There was something in the air, a feeling that the past would return. But this time, I would be ready. I do not know if it was fate, karma, or simply the natural cycle of things. But just when I was starting to feel like I had left everything behind, the past decided to reappear with a force I did not expect. My business, which had started as a small, almost experimental project, was becoming something bigger than I could handle. Orders were increasing, customers were satisfied, and the numbers spoke for themselves. I was on my way to achieving something I never imagined: financial independence and, above all, a deep respect for myself. It was at this moment of growth that I received a message that knocked the wind out of me. It was from Laura. It was not a simple hello or a casual message asking how I was. No, it was a long text, charged with a tone that mixed nostalgia and despair. It said something like, "I have been thinking about you, about us, and what we had. I think I made a mistake." A mistake? As if betraying my trust and destroying everything we had together could be reduced to a simple oops. I messed up. My first impulse was to ignore her. I had erased her from my life, and I had no intention of opening that door again. But, even though I did not reply, my mind could not help but get caught in a whirlwind of emotions. What was she really up to? Did she think that after everything that happened, she could come back with a cheap apology? I decided not to dwell on it and focus on what really mattered: my business and the new life I had built. But Laura did not stop. Days later, she started calling me. Not once, but repeatedly. Always at the end of the day, when the offices were closing and I was exhausted. At first, I rejected her calls, but then she started leaving voicemails. Hearing her voice again after so long was like opening a wound I thought had closed. She said things like, "I know I messed up, but I realized that no one understands me like you do." It was surreal. She, the same woman who had destroyed everything for a mirage of wealth, was now begging for a second chance. A couple of days later, I found out why she was so insistent. One of our mutual friends called me to inform me of the situation: their relationship with my brother had collapsed. I was not surprised, but hearing the details left me perplexed. Apparently, my brother had spent everything he had on luxuries to impress Laura, but the debts caught up with him quickly. Over time, the arguments began, and finally, the separation. Laura was alone, without money, and apparently, repentant. That information hit me like a hurricane. Was that what she was looking for, to come back to me because she had hit rock bottom? The mere idea filled me with a mixture of bitter laughter and contained rage. Did she really think she could just walk back into my life as if nothing had happened? But instead of getting angry, I decided to see it another way: as an opportunity to prove to myself how much I had changed. Laura was not a problem. She was proof that I was a completely different person from the man she had left behind. It was at that moment that I decided to take the reins of the situation. If she wanted to talk, then I would listen, but not with the purpose of reconciling, but so she could see firsthand the man I had become. I was no longer the insecure guy who let others define his worth. Now I had something she could never take away from me: pride in what I had achieved and the certainty that my life was better without her. When I finally agreed to meet, I did it on my own terms. I met her at a simple coffee shop, away from my work and personal environment. I did not want her to have any clue about my recent success. She arrived late, dressed in what was clearly an attempt to regain that perfect image she always cared about more than anything else. But I was not the same man she remembered. My priorities had changed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in complete control of the situation. As I listened to her talk about her mistakes and how she missed what we had, I could not help but notice how empty her words sounded. It was as if she was reading a script, trying to manipulate me as she had done before. But I was not the same, and this time the cards were in my favor. Laura arrived late to the cafe, a habit she had not changed since our relationship. While I waited, calmly sipping my tea, I took the opportunity to look around. It was not a luxurious place, and that was intentional. I wanted to keep this meeting neutral, almost unimportant, as if it were just another errand in my day. However, when she finally appeared, her entrance was anything but discreet. She was trying too hard with her appearance, as if she were trying to remember who she was when we were a couple. Her carefully chosen clothes, meant to give the impression of success, said one thing, but her eyes told a completely different story. There was insecurity in them, a doubt I had never seen before. We greeted each other curtly, almost uncomfortably. I did not hug her or kiss her on the cheek, as I would have done in the past. Just a cold nod, enough to mark the distance between us. I sat with my arms crossed, waiting for her to start talking. I wanted to hear what she had to say, but I also wanted to measure every word, every gesture. And then she began her speech. She started with an apology, but it was not sincere. I knew it, because she focused more on justifying her actions than on acknowledging the harm she had caused. She talked about how she had felt pressured, how she had fallen into the trap of seeking an easy life with my brother. According to her, she had learned her lesson. But what struck me most was how she tried to twist the narrative, posing as a victim of her own decisions. She said things like, "Your brother promised me the world, but it was all lies." I did not know what I was losing until it was too late. While she spoke, I barely reacted. I kept a neutral face, although inside, my mind was churning with a mixture of indignation and satisfaction. Did she really think her pathetic excuse for remorse would be enough? I did not mention it at the time, but her tale of woe made one thing clear to me: Laura was not there because she missed me as a person, but because she missed the stability I had given her. To her, I was an opportunity, not a human being. Then came the part one was waiting for. In an almost rehearsed tone, she told me that she thought maybe we could try to start over. She asked me to forget the past and give us another chance, hoping that I would fall into her web once more. But I did not. Instead of answering immediately, I took a sip of my tea and let the silence take over the table. Laura began to fidget, moving her hands and nervously adjusting her hair. Finally, I broke the silence, but not with the words she was expecting. Instead of committing to something or showing interest, I changed the subject to something casual, as if what she had said had no weight. I talked about the weather, about my work, about how much my life had changed since she left. I dropped little details that showed my success, but subtly, as if I was not trying to impress her. I could see how this disconcerted her. Laura was not used to being ignored, or worse, irrelevant, and although she did not say it, her expression spoke volumes. Every word I said was a reminder that she had made the wrong decision, and now she was paying the consequences. And best of all, I did not have to raise my voice or say anything cruel to make her understand that. My presence, my calmness, and my confidence were punishment enough. When we finally finished our conversation, I did not give her false hope. There were no promises of reunion or sweet words, just a cold thank you and a "see you around" that made it clear that our story, at least for me, was over. As she walked away, I could tell she had expected something else, something that never came. For the first time, I had the control, and she knew it. When Laura left the cafe, I could see in her walk a mixture of confusion and defeat. But if she thought that was the end of our story, she was very wrong. There was something she still did not know, a card I had not yet played, and that would completely change the perspective of everything she thought she knew. I decided to let fate take care of showing her the truth in the most unexpected way. It was not planned, but the circumstances aligned in my favor. A few weeks later, a family gathering was organized at my parents' house. They had insisted that I attend because they wanted to show me something important. I imagined it would be some kind of gesture to show me that the wounds of the past were healing, or maybe an excuse to see each other after so long. What I did not know was that this meeting would be the perfect setting for an outcome that not even I could have anticipated. I arrived on time, impeccably dressed, as if I were prepared for an important event. There was something about the atmosphere that felt different, almost charged with tension, although I could not identify why. Upon entering the main room, there they were, Laura and my brother, sitting together, but clearly uncomfortable. Laura avoided looking directly at me, and my brother feigned a smile that seemed more forced than sincere. The contrast with my relaxed attitude was evident, and it did not go unnoticed by anyone. The conversation started casually, but it soon became more interesting. My father, with his direct and straightforward style, began to talk about the family's recent achievements. That is when he brought up the big news: I had acquired the company where my brother worked. Yes, after everything that happened, I ended up buying the company where my brother was just another employee. It was not for revenge, although I admit that the turn of events had a poetic touch. I did it because it was a perfect business opportunity, but the fact that he was there added an extra level of satisfaction. The announcement dropped like a bomb. I could see my brother tense up, trying to maintain his composure. Laura, on the other hand, seemed unable to process what she had just heard. Her eyes went from my father to me, as if she were looking for confirmation that it was not a joke. But the icing on the cake came when my father added, in an almost innocent tone, that I was also the owner of the house they lived in. Yes, the same house that my brother and Laura had chosen together after getting married. The impact was immediate. My brother, who had always had an arrogant attitude, now seemed smaller, more vulnerable, and Laura, who had always projected an image of confidence and control, was completely out of place. They did not know what to say or how to react. It was a sight to behold. How for the first time they understood that the decisions they made in the past were now catching up with them. I did not say much at that moment. I preferred to let my father's words and the looks of the others fill the uncomfortable silence. My mother, who had always been more sympathetic, tried to smooth things over, but there was not much she could do. The truth was too obvious, too overwhelming. Laura and my brother were trapped in a situation they had created themselves, and now they had no choice but to face the consequences. When the meeting ended, Laura approached me. Her attitude had completely changed. She was no longer the confident woman who had left me to look for something better. Now she was someone desperate to get back what she had lost. She asked to speak to me privately, as if she believed there was still something that could save her from humiliation. But I was no longer the same man she had left behind. I had the clarity, the strength, and the determination that I had lacked before, and I was not willing to let her back into my life. The confrontation that followed was brief but revealing. For the first time, I told her everything I had kept inside for months, not with anger, but with a calmness that completely disarmed her. I made it clear that my success was not to prove anything to her, but to prove to myself what I was capable of. I told her that my life had improved since she left, and that I had no interest in returning to the past. Her tears and pleas did not change anything. The door she had closed would never open again. After that family reunion, everything changed. It was as if the veil that had for so long covered the true intentions of Laura and my brother had completely fallen. From that moment on, my life and theirs took completely different paths. Laura could not accept the reality that she had lost. In the days following the meeting, she tried to contact me again and again calls. Messages. She even showed up at my office a couple of times. Her excuses ranged from remorse for what she had done to absurd justifications of how it had all been a mistake. But I had no intention of giving in, not out of pride, but because I had learned to value something much more important: my peace of mind and my dignity. After all, it is not just about forgiving, but about knowing which people deserve to be in your life. She was not one of those people. My brother, on the other hand, opted for silence. I do not know if it was the humiliation or the blow to his ego, but he stopped looking for me altogether. However, in the workplace, he could not escape my presence. As the owner of the company, I began to regularly attend key meetings, and he had to sit in the same room, forced to acknowledge that he now worked for me. It was not my intention to make him feel small, but I was not going to hide my success either. The tension was palpable, and every time I saw him look down, I understood that deep down he knew he had ruined our relationship. As for me, my life kept moving forward. I had resumed my hobbies, strengthened my relationships with friends and family who were truly worthwhile, and most importantly, I had learned to enjoy my time alone. It was on one of those quiet days that I met someone new. She was different, someone who was not interested in what I had, but in who I was. That relationship started slowly, without pressure, but I quickly realized how genuine it was. With her, I felt, for the first time in a long time, that I was being valued for what really mattered. Meanwhile, Laura and my brother began to experience the consequences of their decisions. The luxury they had dreamed of quickly disappeared. The house they shared was nothing more than an empty symbol, a constant reminder that it did not belong to them. Rumors about what had happened in our family spread, and soon even their closest friends began to distance themselves. It was as if everything they tried to build on lies and betrayal was crumbling. One day, months later, Laura showed up again. This time, it was not at my office or at a family event, but at a cafe I used to frequent. She looked different, worn down, as if life's blows had finally caught up with her. She asked for 5 minutes, and although my initial instinct was to refuse, I decided to listen. Her words were a mixture of regret and despair. She admitted that she had made mistakes, that she had been selfish, and that now she understood what she had lost. But I did not need her apology. I listened to her in silence, and when she finished, I calmly told her that there were no hard feelings, but there were no second chances either. Saying goodbye to Laura that afternoon, I felt something I had not felt in years: peace. There was no more anger, pain, or desire for revenge. I had moved past that stage, and with it, I had freed myself from any weight that she and my brother represented. The following years were the best of my life. My relationship with that special person grew naturally and beautifully. My company reached new levels of success, and I finally felt like I had found my place in the world. Laura and my brother went their separate ways, but their decisions led them down complicated paths. Although our story was marked by conflict, it also taught me the importance of resilience, dignity, and above all, the value of moving forward without looking back. This is not a story of revenge, although it may seem like it. It is a story of how people's decisions always have consequences, and how, in the end, life has a way of balancing things out.